UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself from reservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself from reservation.
Keep the red flag flying there.
And welcome, pop pickers. It's absolutely lovely. Or should I call you Justicios? Welcome to the show. And my golly, have we got a show for you tonight? 3 wonderful socialist commentators. Isn't it just great that you've got a channel which actually tells you what socialists think about these things? It's sort of not a lineup of neoliberals and Tories. And my lineup of good, honest socialist people is Paul Daly, the boss. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Jane Strange, the brain box. Hi, Jane. And Terry Wilkes, the person who terrifies me by sometimes saying things that scare me to death.
I was just thinking, how's John going to describe me tonight?
The one who scares me. Okay. It's so lovely to see you all. God bless you. And time for the week.
Just waiting for the jingle to finish there. So the other members of the panel can't hear the jingles tonight. I don't know why, but it's...
And he nodded.
It did
and
work.
I thought, this nod, if you're watching the podcast, just take it back a bit. And he goes...
Yeah, I fully admit to these
it's
things.
Like a nod, and he was just dropping me in it. Paul, moment of your week.
My moment of the week is... It's a quote. And I wonder if anyone in the comments or anyone on the panel can guess who said this, which figure from, well, it was said this week, so it's probably going to be obvious that it's not certain people, it's not going to be dead people, but, you might think it might be a bit Enoch Powell-y or something like that. So, it said, about immigrants. If you suddenly find your neighbours have changed, and you suddenly find that the food in the shops is different, and you suddenly find that the faces in the schools are
strange
different.
Faces.
That creates fear. Who said
I know
that?
Who it is. I know, because I'm a clever dick.
Do I have to be polite?
It's been got in the comments.
We all know Margaret Hodge.
Yeah, Margaret Hodge. Margaret Hodge, the massive anti-racist campaigner that she is, the person who received flowers from the BNP, and the person who called Jeremy Corbyn an effing anti-Semite to his face, despite the fact that he campaigned with the Jewish community in his own constituency against her, the council that she led, to try not to desecrate a Jewish cemetery. Yes, it was Margaret Hodge, the South African family owner who profited from apartheid. Margaret Hodge, who is now some sort of figure of like anti-racism that we should all bow down to. What an absolute scuzzbucket she is.
She was the person, Paul, who, when she was being investigated by a parliamentary body about saying those things to Corbyn, claimed that it was anti-Semitism for her to be charged in that way, to be questioned in that way. And now she's coming out with things that, if she'd been Diane Abbott, she would have been suspended from the Labour Party.
Well, she's just the sort of person who really damages, because anti-Semitism, as we all know, is incredibly real, is incredibly brutal, is an insidious form of racism that's gone back centuries, and she devalues it by using it in the way that she does, and saying that things are anti-Semitic if they're aimed at Jewish. No, it's not your Jewishness we're having a go at. It's the fact that you're horribly racist. That's what we're having a go at. And Jewish people aren't racist. You are, Margaret Hodge.
Jacqueline Hemmings, moment of the week, seeing thumbnail photos of Johnson and Trump. Johnson with his hairbrush and Trump without the orange gunk on his face. She wonders whether he can't afford it anymore. Mark Lundy's moment of the week was the awesome celebration of Jeremy's 40 years as an MP. Absolutely. Kirsty Smith. Yes, I agree with you, Kirsty. It says her moment of the week is currently being debated and she's been watching live. This is the fatal motion in Parliament to try and kill the anti-protest bill. The anti-protest bill, people, just as a matter of interest, is not about allowing people to disrupt our lives. And it's not even about whether we're going to define seriously disruptive as anything more than minor. It's about the right of a government to overturn a parliamentary decision by backdoor methods. And that's what it's all about. And if the Labour peers don't support that fatal motion, it's a bad day for democracy, never mind the Labour Party. Jane, your moment of the week.
So my moment of the week was that the big issue's been running some articles the last few weeks, and there was a documentary, I think, on the BBC last week as well about the mistreatment of LGBT people in our armed forces. So there's some really horrifying stories. I had no idea that these things were happening in this country when I was growing up and, into my young adulthood. It's really disgusting the way people were hunted down, bullied, harassed, lost their jobs and their homes, had their lives destroyed, and the sheer damage to their mental health and the destruction to people's lives. And I'm guessing probably suicides and just absolutely horrific. I can't believe that's happened in this country so recently, but even worse than that, it's not been officially acknowledged or apologised for, and there's been no compensation for those people who've been through that. And so there's a campaign by people who've survived this horrific treatment now to get some compensation for what they've been put through. But the really, really worth reading those articles in the big issue and watching the documentary. Not a nice thing to hear about, but important that we know about it and support the campaign.
Yes, thank you very much indeed for drawing that to our attention. And Kirsty, your moment of the week.
Who's Kirsty, John?
Kerry. Kirsty's on the chat. Kerry, what's your moment of the week?
Well, funny enough, what we were talking about before we started about kids being written off in where the likes of I come from, like a rough estate in Middlesbrough, Grangetown, and stuff like that. And I've actually got an interview, which I'm very much like that, which is really looking good, to working in a children's care home, like a residential home for kids in my local area. And I think that a lot of kids are massively wrote off before they even begin, if they're under like the postcode or they're in care. And I think that, like, before we came on air, like we were discussing it, saying that kids need a significant, like, solid figure in their lives, which a lot of kids find within their teachers, like we all mentioned before. So yeah, I've got a job interviewing a children's residential home, well, a young adolescent home. And I think that I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I think I will be quite good at that. I can't control my own kids, but I might be able to help them. I can't control my own. Just do what they want in my house, but I might be able to help and support them and enable them. But yeah, that's my moment of the week.
I found that the clue to working with special needs is to win by continuously retreating. That's the key to it.
I've got nowhere to hide in my house, John. I wish I could.
I suspect
I'm tortured all the time.
Paul will have some good advice as well on that.
If you want to take 3 kids, it will be sorted.
And we wish you well in your interview, though if the children are as scared of you as I am, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Paul.
Now it's time
Was
for
that a
the
go, or
big
I'm starting?
story.
Now, it's the big story, and the big story, of course, there's only one big story this week, and that's Johnson, and sort of it's Paul who I'm going to talk to about it first. Paul, what's been happening?
Well, now people suddenly seem to care that Johnson's a big old liar, so it's just the press that decided that he would be great as a prime minister, and they decided to support, and they encouraged other people to vote for him, and the Tory party that fully backed him, and and all this get Brexit done business, and then all the stuff during COVID of stay in, but we're going to party, but actually we didn't do anything wrong. And they were back throughout that, and there were media who knew about all these things that didn't report it at the time because they were all chummy. They've now decided to fully turn on Johnson, and the Privileges Committee in Parliament have investigated him, and it looks like they're going to find out that he actually did deliberately mislead Parliament, which is what's going to happen if you put a liar in charge of the country. Now, he's not the only one who lies a lot in Parliament. There are a lot of them who lie a lot on both sides of the House, but particularly the Tories have been lying a lot over the past few years. This particular turn started when Boris Johnson put out his ludicrous resignation list of like about 100 people, including his dad, and there were a few Tory MPs on there: Nadine Dorries, Alok Sharma, and Alan someone. The third one, there's another one anyway. And they were approached by the people who they were going to be put in the House of Lords, and they were approached as MPs as a warning, saying, look, you're going to need to resign within the next 6 months if you want these to go through. They didn't, as a favour to probably Sunak, so that they wouldn't have a by-election, but then assumed that Sunak would later on put them in the Lords, and he kind of didn't. And then also at the same time, there's all sorts of other things going on because the Privileges Committee are looking into whether Johnson lied, which he clearly did, and they're going to prove that he lied, and they're going to show that he lied. And then he's gone, oh, it's a kangaroo court, and it's like, these people are out to get me. And it's like, well, they were your mates 6 months ago, so they might be absolutely snakes. They might be, really untrustworthy, but they actually should be on your side, and this doesn't look very good to find him guilty of this. So anyway, he decided, well, I'll resign rather than this. Personally, I think he's going to start his own party and stand against everyone. And, there was a registered trademark for British, what's it called? National conservatism, registered on the day he resigned. So that's interesting.
It is interesting.
And There are things afoot. Obviously, it's the Boris Johnson show, but we all knew it. They used to like that. And, there are Labour MPs who backed Boris Johnson. There are people who are in the Labour Party now who back Boris Johnson. There are the likes of Ian Austin who backed Boris Johnson, who used to be a Labour MP. So they all knew exactly who he was. It's not like he's changed. I don't feel sorry for Johnson, because this is like symptomatic of the British establishment, where they all think that they're entitled to these positions, they're entitled to this lifestyle, they're entitled to make the decisions. They have no noble intention. They don't want to do anything nice for the country. They simply want to rule the country and then look after themselves. They feel entitled to that. I don't feel sorry for them for that. But in a way, they're having a go at him for exactly what they wanted him to do, which was be a big old liar, win an election, make sure that nothing could change in the country, protect the establishment. He did it. He did his job. And the establishment, now he's seeing the establishment kind of turn against him when he was their big hope, he was their big saviour. because Corbyn was about to completely overturn that establishment thinking. He was going to make things like clearly he wouldn't have done. Let's face it, if Corbyn had become Prime Minister, they would have made a government of national unity, like the likes of Keir Starmer and all the other like people who weren't really Labour at all and don't really have Labour values at all would have immediately turned on him. Let's be realists. They would have done, or there would have been there would have been a military coup or something. They were never going to let it happen. But Johnson made it not necessary to do that, and then they turned on him.
A number of issues. Let's just backtrack. Why would you say? Why has he gone then? Should he? I mean, why did he not stay and fight his cause? Why do you think? I mean, he's been fighting his cause through Parliament the entire time. Why did he choose this time to sort of go?
It was a perfect storm, wasn't it? I think he had the people who were willing to go with him, which causes a big stink. It damages Sunak. And it's all part of the Johnson brand, you know, let's just do this. Let's just do this. I'm more important than everyone. So therefore, I should do this. I'll flounce and it'll create publicity for whatever it is, whatever's the next step in my life. That's what he's thinking. So he doesn't have values. He's not like trying to do something good. He's just trying to, you know, it's like a weird version of Kardashians or something like that. You know, it's a publicity stunt to do things at this time. And again, the other thing is as well is jump before you're pushed, because had he been found to have done that, he would have been banned from Parliament for at least 10 days, which would have meant there could have been a recall petition, which could have meant that there was a by-election anyway, to see, and he'd have had to stand for his own seat. That would have been complicated. Maybe he wouldn't have been allowed to. So it was very much a case of jump before you pushed, because I think it probably looks worse for him. I'll ask
about that in a moment, but it sort of, was it a kangaroo court? I mean, what do you reckon? I mean, he's questioned the parliamentary committee, which is going to find him guilty. I mean, how do you feel about that?
He's put in some last minute legal stuff, so they delayed the decision again. So it was meant to come tomorrow, I think, and now it's going to be a little bit later because he's got some sort of legal thing that he wants to do. Was it a kangaroo court? I would say that I don't know how they could possibly have found him not to have lied when he clearly did. And it was simple. It's quite a simple thing. It was just that he said that at no point were any rules broken, and he knew that to be false at the time. During the COVID parties, which we all know he had. Now, most people who support him don't even argue that he didn't have parties and stuff. They just kind of went, he was working hard. Look at him. He needed a break, the mad alcoholic. Sorry, is it allegedly? So he needed to have these crazy parties because he was having such a hard time. So therefore it was out. So no one argues that he wasn't lying at that point. He admitted that he was lying. He just said he didn't know he was lying.
What I've got on this, Paul, is that you yourself know that because you've experienced it, you go into a meeting and it's ostensibly to give you a fair crack of the whip to see what you say and to judge, but you're skewered before you even set foot in it. They've made up their mind before. Now, do you think that that was the case with the parliamentary committee, that they'd made up their mind before they even looked at a shred of evidence? Now, that's my experience of the establishment. That's your experience of the establishment. Is it just that finally Johnson sort of met the establishment?
Well, the establishment turned on them, didn't they? So yes, they probably had made their decision, but it's based upon the fact that he really did lie, and everyone knows that he lied. It's just his argument was that he didn't know that he lied. He did it by accident. He misled Parliament by accident. They've said it was on purpose because there is loads of evidence that it was on purpose, because he did know that the parties had gone on at the time, and he did know everything about it. So, you know, it's really clear. It would be very, very hard for them to lie about this one. But I believe they probably would have done had they not wanted to draw a line under Johnson as an establishment. So a kangaroo court, no, but they're coming to the right decision. possibly for the wrong reasons. You know, they've given up on him because it's probably better for the establishment to distance him. But he's done the job, because the establishment aren't loyal to individuals. You know, he's probably blown it with them for a while.
Thank you. Kerry, where do the Tories go from here? I mean, Gove says it's time for us to move on. The era of Johnson is gone. Are they going to be able to? What happens to the Tory party now?
I think they should get what they deserve, and I think Sunak's a lying snake anyway. And now he's got a set of balls. A set of you-know-what to speak on a platform saying about Boris Johnson yesterday. They enabled his behaviour. They enabled a lot of stuff around the COVID thing. I mean, is it nearly 300,000 people died during COVID and stuff like that? And he's Johnson being Johnson, which I think he's a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? A bit of a sociopath. I think he's jumped the ship because he knows it's sinking because of all this that's coming up about him. And he's misled a lot of people, which we all know. He's misled a lot of people, and he's actually going to make more money now by not being an MP. And what is all that about? He's our former Prime Minister, and for all this legal stuff, isn't it the taxpayer who are paying for it all? All his legal, like, drivel and stuff like that. He's a class clown to the highest order, and he thinks he's the English version of Donald Trump, technically. He just thinks he's untouchable, and I think that the lying in Parliament and stuff like that, the privilege is going to prove that he's completely and utterly lied, and that's why he's jumped ship.
Let's bring you back, Kerry, to the question, which is, what does this mean for the Tory party? I mean, are they going to be able to gather this up and head off to another general election? Definitely not.
Definitely not, because regardless of your politics, whether you're red, blue, green, yellow, or whatever colour politics you portray, COVID affected everybody. Everybody knows someone that was lost during, like, the COVID pandemic because of coronavirus. And I just think it's truly, like, heartbreaking. Like, I shared it actually on social media this week about a mother who was scared for a daughter who was mentally ill, and she phoned the police for guidance to go and see her daughter. The police told her to stay where she was. She phoned the police again. Have you gone and done a welfare check on her? This young girl was found dead, and her mum and dad couldn't go and find her to help her prevent, like, a mental health crisis. And there was only 3 people allowed at this girl's funeral. Why? He was having cake in Parliament, and it's like they've totally took us for, like, they've totally just made us a laughing, like, they've totally just took, can I swear, John? They've just totally took the piss out of us lot. We all have to follow the rules, and they don't. Boris Johnson think he's above everybody in anything, and he just didn't give a hoot.
Talk to me, Kerry, about the honours list and sort of, I mean...
Simon Clarke, Ben Ouchin. Whoa! Honestly, is he taking, like, mushrooms or something while he's been writing this list up? He's an absolute delusional. He's delusional. He's a moron, and he's delusional. And it absolutely makes my blood boil that Ben Ouchin, currently with the Teeswork stuff, and Simon Clarke, who's the sitting MP for my next door constituency. I mean, I actually feel a bit sorry for, like, Nadine Dorris, whatever she's called, because she was a complete and utter ally of him, and she supported him to the highest order, and he totally, like, pooed on her from a great height, didn't he? And you just think, wow. And I just think he's just trying to run a mockery of this country continuously about democracy and everything. He's going to go out on a high, and he's going to earn millions from it. And it makes me bad.
I realise, by the way, on that honours list, I feel sorry for that 29-year-old young woman, because really her life must be a total misery at the moment, because people with no evidence whatsoever are saying the most appalling things. And it's all because Johnson's is such a scumbag. Nobody knows anything about her. But I mean, these may be true, but they may not be true. And sort of all she, there she is. She's been put on the list, and I presume we shall get over it. A question. I know we despise the man, and I know we're outraged by the honours list, but do you think he's damaged the Tory party? For instance, has he damaged Sunak? Has it have they got any less chance of being elected next year because of what's happened?
Are you talking to me, John?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, massively so, yeah. Sunak looks like a little skinny, scrawny worm at the moment who hasn't got a clue what's going on within his own party, and he's supposed to be the leader of that party and our Prime Minister. And Boris Johnson is running circles round him, and it's come a bit like a circus parade, and I genuinely believe that. And like, I think it's the most blunt words I've ever read Sunak saying yesterday about Boris Johnson. But I'm not being funny. How 40-faced is Boris Johnson? I mean, Rishi Sunak, he was the Chancellor under Boris Johnson. He resigned and then went and stood whatever, and then went and done whatever. They're all slimy little snaky worms. And I hope they get what, even though I'm a bit cringed by the Labour Party, as we all are, I hope they get what they deserve. I hope they get annihilated in a general election.
Thank you. I think we can all agree on that. Finally, Jane, Johnson. Now, we've been the two previous speakers have been very cruel about Johnson. I think it's hard to deny that he's had a major impact. I mean, talk to us about your assessment of Johnson as a leader. What is these, give a judgment on his leadership, on him as a person, on what he's done, and talk about his legacy to us.
So I would say, as a leader, he's extremely selfish and divisive and dishonest, I'd say, with the main characteristics. I don't see him as anyone who has a particularly strong ideology of his own, but who is able to be swayed in the direction of whoever can offer him something that will put his life in a situation that he'd like it to be in, which is quite dangerous. And in terms of the legacy that he's left for this country, I'd say that we're a divided nation much more than we ever have been at any point during my lifetime. I'd say we've been humiliated internationally over our behaviour regarding Northern Ireland in the Brexit negotiations. He's normalised dishonesty. He's pushed through a botched Brexit deal, which has been incredibly damaging. And as someone who voted Remain, I feel that Brexit could have been done in a much, much better way that would not have caused the damage it has caused to people in this country. And that was absolutely possible. And he chose, out of sheer recklessness, not to do it for his own personal gain. I feel that he stood back and let Theresa May take the flak and do the hard work of negotiating a deal that he had absolutely no care for what was in that deal. And although it wouldn't have been a deal that I would have liked, a lot more care went into it than the absolute joke that he pushed through at the last minute when he came crashing into power after scuppering his opponents in the Tory party. And when I say he's normalised unacceptable behaviour, he's normalised lying in Parliament. We've got this ridiculous situation now where people have seen on film MPs getting disciplined for telling the truth by pointing out that he's lying. He's put us in a state where you can't tell the truth in this country without getting in trouble for it in those official situations. Because of his own privilege and selfishness, he's illegally prorogued Parliament, and absolutely nothing was done about it. And it's really dangerous the extent to which he's done awful things and watched people around him do awful things, and has not been held to account for it.
The Financial Times judged that which I sort of rather approved of, said that he was a campaigning genius, but that his character was incapable of actually running the country, sort of an alcohol-fueled drama queen. I mean, so i.e., he was brilliant at getting himself into the job, but when he was there, he was constitutionally unsuited for it. I mean, is that a fair assessment? I thought that was a good assessment. What do you judge that?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's correct. We had the highest deaths per million in the G7 in this rich island country during the pandemic. That was completely unnecessary and completely down to his absolute negligence. He had his chance to be the Churchill that he wants us to think he is. All he had to do was just care a little bit. He's surrounded by civil servants and allies in Parliament. You know, he wasn't doing it alone, but he just couldn't even do that, even when people's lives were on the line, even when tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people died around him as a consequence. He just couldn't push himself to care enough to do a good job.
Two quick questions before we finish, Jane. The first one is Kirsty Smith. The issue is Tory voters still think he's amazing. Do you think there's any chance that he'll come back onto the political scene?
I personally do think there's a good chance that he will and that he could be successful. I hope I'm wrong, but you know, stranger things have happened. And like you say, this is a man, look at the people now, you know, sacrificing themselves for him, people laying down their careers for this abject liar. I don't understand why at this point anyone would throw themselves under the bus for him, but they're still doing it. And I read an interesting quote about him the other day from one of his former employees that said that it was about an essay he'd written when he was a young man about being successful in politics, and how what you needed to do was gather admirers around you and let them think that you cared about them, so that they would adore you and sacrifice themselves for you, but you know, whilst you wouldn't give a damn about them. So even when he was a young man, he had this ideology in his mind that, you know, in terms of his own personal success, that's what he needs to do. And that's what I see playing out in front of me right now. So if even now, when he's this humiliated, ridiculous figure, he's got people doing that for him, I can imagine he will find more people to do that for him.
Stuart Sutherland says 50p on him running in a different seat. And one of the things I was talking to Paul about, if you remember, was sort of he wasn't going to win Redbridge and Uxbridge or Redditch, you know, whatever it is. Rushden is anyway. He wasn't going to win there because he was a marginal. And is he at this moment seeking a safe seat to come back as a Tory, or is he forming an alliance? Sort of, I think it's worthwhile, Stuart, doing that. I've got one last question for you, Jane. And I read very interestingly that essentially Starmer's Labour policies are very similar to Boris Johnson's policies for the 2019 election. And so I just got one last question for you. Johnson may have gone, but we're seeing Johnsonianism continue in the Labour Party manifesto. That too clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's about Johnson. I think it's about destroying the left and the establishment. But obviously Johnson.
Levelling up. Levelling up. Sticking up with Brexit.
I mean,
making the Windsor Agreement work.
Double talk. This levelling up whilst equality continues to widen. It's just ridiculous they're using these words, isn't it? I don't know if I'm more scared of Johnson or Starmer as a Prime Minister. As a person alone, I'm more scared of Starmer, but I'm more scared of the people around Johnson and what he'd lend himself to. But it's not much in it.
Thank you. I'm going to have to move on. I would have loved to come back to you, Paul. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you got a million things to say. Perhaps you can share them in the comments later. And we'll move on, and I'll try and look for the nod from Paul. Now, and sort of the other stories, we've got two stories for you, which sort of just crackers. The first one is the Freeport, the Teesside Freeport. Harry, tell us about what's going on there. Many of the people, remember that many of the people listening won't have a clue about what the Teesside Freeport is or why it's so important. But tell us what's going on with the Teesside Freeport.
Well, the Teesside Freeport's a big, massive scam to begin with. But we've got a Tees Valley Mayor called Ben Ouchen, Tory Tees Valley Mayor. And I'm prolifically known, and he's even called me out for this call. I've called him Backhander Ben. He used public money to buy a lot of the British Steel site in the Tees Works, like out the back of me in Redcar. But then he's let a private company like manage this, who have earned millions and millions and millions of pounds, but put nothing back in to the public purse. And like Dorman Long was knocked down, and this was all like, it's basically a big overspend of public money, and now they're trying to cover the backsides because Andy MacDonald's calling it out. But they're trying to slay Andy MacDonald about it because he's using his privilege within Parliament, but he won't sit outside of the Commons because the likes of the Tory machine, which we all know what they're like, Ben Ouchen, Simon Clarke, Jacob Young, YTSMP all over, they would serve him with suits, like lawsuits. So he's using his parliamentary privileges to speak about it in the House of Commons, so they can't do anything on the outside. But basically, a lot of public money's being spent on the Tees Works by Ben Ouchen, but to lead them as a private company. But this private company, I think he sold it to this private company for £100, but this private company are not paying anything back into the public pocket of it. So it's privatisation to extreme.
What they did was they sold all the scrap metal for millions and millions of pounds and just kept the money. And so they've made, for doing nothing on the site, they've just made, I think it's £100 million.
And these are Ben Ouchen's and the Tories' lots friends.
Yes. I mean,
that's what we need to remember. They're their friends.
Now, to be fair, this was first raised by Private Eye, and the Yorkshire Post and North East Bylines have taken this up. So it's out there now as really a massive scandal. But the Tory party has sort of refused an independent inquiry. It's setting up an internal independent inquiry.
Why Michael Gove?
What do you reckon to that, Kerry?
It's like a carry-on film. If they've got nothing to hide, why can't they have an independent inquiry? And they've got a lot to hide. That's fact. It's like the Freeport and everything like that. They won't have the battling to get unions in the Freeport. And I'm in the community hub that for Unite. The battling to get Ben Ouchen will be all... I'll be honest, and I'll just say how it is, because that's me. He's a smarmy twat. He won't have unions in the Freeport. And he'll say all this to the regional officers A, B, C, and Z, but then he won't act upon it. He's you get these comic things, like a smarmy fat cat with all the money rolling around them. That's what Ben Ouchen reminds me of.
I have a lot of problems with Freeports anyway.
They're an absolute tax dodging fiddle.
It's almost like setting up an independent kingdom within the kingdom.
But I live literally, I would say about 2 miles away where the Freeport would be, and the A66 where I live is gridlocked at 5 o'clock. So how can the infrastructure around this so-called Freeport cope with that? If with torrential rain, it floods, so you can't get into Teesport. It's all money for mates, and it's all a big scam. And
you haven't mentioned the dredging and the consequences of the possible consequences of the dredging.
Massively, yeah. There's a big group for Redcar and stuff, like the thousands of sea life that are dying, the crab. You go on Redcar Beach, there's like hundreds of crabs dead on the beach. Because they're doing whatever. Oh, it's down to dredging. It's not, it's down to your greed. Tory greed who do not give a hoot about the people in Redcar and Cleveland. That's fact.
Thank you. Jane, so one of the things in the Telegraph is that they're complaining that all these people saying these terrible accusations about the Freeport, they're going to actually damage the success of the Freeport, that the company that was thinking of investing in it is now asking questions because of these allegations. I mean, how this sometimes happens by complaining about what Kerry's been complaining about, are we sort of scuppering what actually is being touted as an economic benefit to the people of the area? Are we doing the people a disservice by calling out the corruption? That's what I'm asking.
So I think we're definitely not. And I think it depends on what success is for this Freeport, but I don't feel that it's a great benefit to the people in the local community. There are a lot of areas of concerns around the Freeports, about the looser regulations within them that could be interpreted as a license to have less health and safety rules for workers and potentially endanger workers' lives. As Kerry mentioned, trade unions have been shut out of this, and they were shut out of any talks whatsoever when the idea of Freeports was first being considered by the government. Then there's the tax reliefs that are being offered here. So business rate relief, which although the government said that they are going to reimburse local authorities for, is still coming out of public funds. And George Monbiot wrote an article in The Guardian that you shared, John, and he said that he mentioned that Freeports around the world can be vulnerable to attracting organised crime, money laundering, drug trafficking and terrorist financing. Okay. And certainly I can see how that could happen when you've got an area where there's loose regulations, loose tax laws. I don't think it's a good thing for the local people, and the impact on the environment has been absolutely horrific. And now the local community, or I don't know if it's coming from local funds or government funds, but the sheer vast amounts of money that are going into fixing the environmental damage that's been done. But you can't, no amount of money is going to put right what's been done and the damage that has been done. There's been fishing industries that have been decimated, local coastal tourist businesses that have been decimated, and lots of sea life that's been poisoned, and you can't put that right. So I don't really see how this can be a good thing for the local communities. But I think I'm quite heartened to hear that the investor is asking questions and does care about these allegations of corruption. But I don't see how we get a good situation out of this. It sounds like a lot of public funds have been squandered on handing money over to friends of powerful people. And it all seems very strange. Around Ben Houchin, he's saying that actually £15 million was paid for this land and it was sold at commercial value, but there's no record of the payment ever having been received. And looking into the accounting side of things with the sale of the land, they're saying the land's been recognised as a fixed asset in the books, but the money going through hasn't been recognised in the same accounting periods, and I'm not sure how that can possibly work from an accounting point of view, which makes me really question whether this payment has happened. So no, this just sounds shady and really sad for the damage it's already done to the local community.
I mean, I would contrast the treatment of that woman in Scotland, the woman with the surname of a fish. What is it? Sort of
crab.
Sorry?
Sturgeon.
No, that's not a fish, is it?
I mean, she's Nicola Sturgeon. She's been arrested by the police, who are looking into £600,000 of party funds that they're finding difficult sort of accounting for. She's been arrested and released. This is the former First Minister of Scotland we've got a whole set of people here, and they're dealing with millions and millions of pounds of public money, and we're holding an internal inquiry. It stinks, I think. Paul, my question to you is this. I mean, I think it's interesting. When somebody in the chat says, Kirsty Smith, I don't know what a free port is. I think that this has been going on unknown to the rest of the people in the country, and I don't think it's yet a national scandal. But I think that this has the potential to sink the Tories. I think that when they get to the bottom of this, there's a fair chance, and if Private Eye are speaking out like they're speaking out, there's something there.
Carol Vorderman is.
Yes, the sort of what I mean is this a scandal to sink the Tories, or do you think that they'll manage to sweep it under the carpet and people's lack of it, people's ignorance will mean they get away with it? Paul,
I think a lot of people voted for the Tories thinking that their lives will be better, and I think they'll be convinced that this will somehow help them, because you've got these like cash poor millionaires, you know, in their own heads. You know, they're like, oh, the Tories will be better for me. They don't accept that they're working class people like everyone else. They think that the real problem in the country, and they're being convinced by the press, is that a few people are coming over on some boats. That's still out there. Whereas the people who actually legislate and make their lives tangibly worse are let off scot-free time and again. So I don't know. I don't think it will. Like, I think what the problem is as well, you're not really having that political clout. So if the opposition party were, for example, going, look at this, you're dredging up pyridine in the Tees and it's killing loads of crabs, and you've got sustainable, like, so I've spoken about it on this programme quite a few times about all the crabs in Hartlepool near me that have been washed up, all the dogs getting poorly and things like that. So there were crabs, there were starfish, all sorts. It looks like an apocalypse. It looks utterly horrible. Like, it's painful to look at all this sea life. Now, people have been sustainably fishing there for years and years. They've been using lobster pots. They've been putting back what is too young so that the females can go and breed and things like that. And they've done this for generations, sustainably for generations, and their living's gone. Like, it's gone. It's just, that's it. They're all dead. There's been an apocalypse, and they found pyridine in the water, but then the government went, oh, no, it wasn't that. It's algae. It's an algae thing. And people are like, oh, it's just algae. Yeah. And I know this has factually been a problem that they've dredged up because the Freeport needed a deeper river in the Tees, and the Tees has had all sorts of things dumped into it over the years because of the chemical factories there, and we know what it is, and they're going to start testing this for sure. I say we know this, it's 99% certain that it is pyridine. You know, they have found it in there in the past. They now need to go and investigate it again, but by the time they've done all this, the damage is already done. All the fish are gone, all the crustaceans are gone, and still, we know this is happening, and still there isn't an outcry about it because local politicians are being ignored. It's not making a national thing. It is a national scandal. It is an absolutely appalling thing. And all I think about the way fishermen were used as a pawn in Brexit, and yet now they've actively gone out and destroyed those people's living. And people aren't really outraged about it the way they should be. Some people are, but you've got to go out your way to find it because there's no one issuing press releases on the behalf of people who make a living out of fishing or people who don't want to see these creatures die. And our government and our media are governed by press release. They're governed by money. They don't care about like these actual issues. The stories are given to them in the form of a press release, and they decide what to run with based upon that, based upon power, based upon money. They're not interested in reporting the news, so we're going to really, really struggle to cut through with this, especially when our political class are unwilling to step outside the boundaries of what they're being told to care about by the media.
Thank you. God bless you. I'm going to move quickly on because we've just got 10 minutes left for our last question, and it's about Harry. Now, I feel sorry for Harry, and he was in court. But Jane, tell us all about Harry.
So Prince Harry has taken the Mirror newspaper group to court for a series of articles, I think around 140 articles that were written about him by that group between 1996 and 2010, I believe. And he believes they obtained information in those articles through unlawful and illegal means, which they're disputing. So I think it's a very good thing that he's done this personally. Most of us couldn't afford to hold the press to account. And one of the things that he's pointed out is that anyone, whether you're a public figure, certainly if you're a public figure, but even as a private individual who doesn't choose to be in the public light, you are fair game. If something happens which brings you to their attention, they come after people and mercilessly hound them. These aren't his words, but this is my perception. Look at Jeremy Corbyn and the way he was doorstepped day in, day out, the constant lies that were printed about him, and absolutely nothing happened around this. Sorry, I think with Harry, I feel particularly emotional about this because when I was much younger, I worked in a newspaper warehouse, which might sound irrelevant, but I remember that one summer when I was working there and I was quite young, every single day, I'd never really read newspapers, but there was one specific newspaper with a three-letter name and others that every single day printed increasingly vile and poisonous headlines, articles, and photographs of Princess Diana. Photographs that clearly she had not given permission to be taken. They were, clearly there were people at every step of her life intruding on her and being invasive. The things they were writing were disgusting and nasty and just awful. And I couldn't believe that they would treat a human being like that. And then one night, the early edition of the paper came in and there'd been a car crash and Princess Diana was involved in the car crash. And so the covers came in saying, oh, it's so sad, she's been in a car crash. And then the news came in a few hours later that she died, and they all scrambled and told us to scrap the first article. They all went to be the first one in with the big scoop on the front page that she'd died. And then after that, these same newspapers came out with the touching tributes about our princess as if they really cared, And it just really, it was my first introduction to our newspaper media. And I couldn't believe it. These people, the way they were talking about her in those papers, I feel could have driven someone to suicide, definitely would have destroyed their life. And then when it suited them to sell papers, the very next day to say something nice about her, they pretended they cared. And so I can understand why he's got a very deep feeling about this and wants to hold them to account. I don't think this is about money. We haven't had Leveson 2. We haven't had the suggestions of the original Leveson inquiry implemented. I think this is the best shot we're going to get for a long time at holding these papers to account in the public eye.
Thank you. Paul, has he miscalculated on this? I mean, the general feeling in the newspapers is that there's no real evidence for what he's claiming, that he was underprepared, that he didn't perform well in the witness box. He may have been overconfident. Some of them said he may have been overwhelmed. Some of them suggest. I mean, is he going to lose? Do you think?
Yeah, he'll lose. Because the newspapers have become very, very good at covering themselves, haven't they? It's interesting if you watch things going back years and years. I don't know if anyone's watched the Gaza documentary, where everyone was like, because he was a particularly interesting and kind of eccentric figure, he was saying he was being followed all the time and everyone knew who he was, and they ended up saying that he was paranoid and that he had all these mental health problems and he was imagining things and he was hearing voices and stuff like that. And it turned out it was absolutely true. He was being followed everywhere because his phone was being hacked. and they have a track record of hacking phones. But I don't think it's as easy to prove now. I think there'll be so many ways of intercepting messages, whether that's like, people with tabs on their messenger and things like that. There'll be ways of doing this. There's also like been insinuations, and I don't know whether or not this is true, but that the royal family sometimes leak information on the whereabouts of certain members of the royal family in order to catch them out doing things and stuff. So you don't know what's been going on. I do believe he's been treated pretty badly, but that's because of the institution that he's in, isn't he? Like they want the pound of flesh. I totally think that that's another reason why there should be no such thing as a royal family. It's absolutely ludicrous that there should be one, that there should be a family that's somehow born magically better than other people, and then have to live their lives in the way that they do, in extreme privilege but extreme nosiness. I wouldn't say scrutiny, because they do some awful things. Like some of them, like Prince Andrew, seems to be getting away pretty unscathed from doing what he did, using public money to pay off victims and things. But Harry hasn't apparently done anything like that. He did say that he enjoyed shooting Afghans like it was a video game, so I don't think he's the nice guy that everyone likes to portray him as. And I don't like the way that the left kind of go, oh yeah, but he's kind of one of ours, because I think that what they're trying to do is normalise the royal family for both left and right. Like the right are like, oh, we hate Harry, and the left are like, no, we love Harry. And it's like, well, actually, you don't have to pick a side between Harry and the rest of the royals. You can just think they're all a bunch of doofuses or whatever. So yeah, get rid of the institution. I absolutely hate them. I wish he'd been successful in finding evidence of phone hacking, but I think people wanted to make money out of this again.
Thank you. I think it's sad. I think you're right, Paul. I think it's sad. Kerry, one of the things I found interesting was that the people who were talking about it most were not the British newspapers. The people who were most interested were foreign newspapers, particularly in America, but all over the world. They were talking about this court where the king was in court. Is this because it has no real political relevance to British people at all? Do you think that it's just an irrelevance, or do you think that the case has raises issues of importance that we ought to pursue politically?
Oh, we need to pursue them, definitely. We had a child walking on a public platform behind his own mother's coffin. And my children have lost their dad, and I know what grief does to a child. That child was totally muted, told to put up and shut up. Prince William was different. He was trained to be the future king, where Harry wasn't. And people have got this. I totally agree with Harry. Like, you look what they're doing to Princess Diana, they're trying to do to Meghan Markle. They're not doing that to Kate, are they? And I understand, like, they've got to America and they want the privacy, but if they can speak about the establishment, as they call them, and the English press and stuff like that, good for them, because look what the press done to Jeremy Corbyn, of all people. So I think that we should be on Harry's side, but the right-wing press are trying to turn us against them for attention seeking. When your mother dies when you're that young by being chased by paparazzi, you're going to have beef with the media. So good on Harry, good on him, and I hope I've read his book, and I hope he speaks out a lot more about the royal family and the establishment and the English press. I really do, because it's about time our eyes were opened.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you always, Kerry. The absolute broadside attacks, and so appreciated. And I agree with every word you said there. This was a damaged young man, and they just smelt blood.
Yeah.
Outrageous. And that, people, can you believe, is the end of the show. the comment section has been going crackers. Somebody suggested that you need a separate Zoom for all the people to talk about what we're saying on this program, because it raises so many issues that you want to say things about. Wow, that's just great news to us having the discussion. Thank you for listening to us. I'm going to say goodbye. Do turn up next week, because there's an awful lot to talk about in the news at the
I
moment.
will be, so everyone can turn up.
Oh no, you've just lost us 1 million viewers, Carrie. And I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to thank my 3 wonderful, aren't they brilliant? I mean, it's just a joy to be here with them. And I'm going to ask Paul to do the summing up, as he always does, and get you to try and join Socialist Think Tank and buy the merchandise and give money and all the things he says. And that will be the end. It's like the music playing out on Radio 4. He is the sort of, what is it? What's the name of the music called? Sailing By. Paul is the sailing by of Political Unmuted. Paul.
I'm going to say something a little bit different tonight. I'm going to start off by thanking you, John, because you thank all of us, but without you, the show would be nothing. But I want to say...
I'm going to interrupt here. It's not true what he says, people.
It's very true.
I just send them some questions, they answer them brilliantly, and I sit there and take the credit.
Okay. Well, just accept the fact that we love you anyway, John. So at least accept that. At least accept that as being factual. What I'm going to say is, whatever it is you do, make sure that you back one another up in some sort of way. Remember tonight that Labour have decided not to oppose the anti-protest bills, so that's going to go through, all of these things.
No.
Remember that they've also said that they've now reneged on another promise, which is for universal free childcare, that they were going to do, like all this Sure Start stuff that they're like, oh, remember Sure Start, remember when we did Sure Start? They're going to renege on that promise. Starmer has reneged on everything he said.
Green New
He's
Deal.
going to pick up on, pick up a load of Boris Johnson policies, and the reason for that, in my view, is that he has got backers who are very similar to Boris Johnson's backers, and they set the agenda. He doesn't care. He just wants some power. He doesn't care what he does. He doesn't want to do anything good. So do something good. Do something positive, whether that is in your own local community, make people's lives better, or whether it is trying to change the system. But don't think you're going to be able to do it from within the establishment political parties. It is gone. Like I see people trying to fight for Jamie Driscoll and stuff. Like I would try and fight for Jamie Driscoll if I thought that was not the most futile thing in the world to do. I would back Jamie Driscoll, but it's just silly. It's a waste of time. They're quite happy. It's not going to change. Nothing you do is going to change. So get out and build something better. If you want to build a political party, get out of the Labour Party and do something better with your life other than have your everything dictated to for you and every little word checked, and people scrolling through your Twitter and just saying nasty things to you.
Being told, Paul, that you can't speak about a name. We were told they couldn't say the name of Jamie.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? It's
who
just
must not be mentioned.
Well, they did it to Corbyn. They did it with Corbyn. Now they're doing it to Jamie Driscoll. And I don't want to do what do you call them? That poem, because I'll be accused of devaluing the Holocaust or something, because it was about the Holocaust. It's much more serious than that. But they've come for Corbyn, and they actually came for the person at the top, and everyone was like, I don't know, maybe he's an anti-Semite, and then they came for all. Firstly, they'd come for all these supporters, and then they kind of just went down gradually, and then you're left wing, and that's it. And eventually it'll be like, you're not a Blairite, or you're not Peter Mandelson, you're out. Eventually it'll be everyone. That's the way it works. They're coming for you too. They don't care about you. And at the end of the day, there'll be people with the little rosettes knocking on doors, And
Oh, I can't wait, me. I can't wait
and
because I'll be like,
they'll kick you. These people will throw you to the wolves as soon as they look at you. They are horrible. They are appalling people. I've never done anything better than leave the Labour Party because I feel so much
me
better.
too.
Yeah, so
Well, I was myself.
so build something nice, build something better. There are so many good people out there, and you're being stood on by a tiny little man with a midget syndrome's boot. That's it. Like
You've got better
Starmer,
words than me, Paul.
and that's it. And another thing, like, why is Starmer? Why are all these little fellas with like big egos running the world into the ground? Let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of Starmer. Let's get rid of Macron. Let's get rid of Sunak. All those awful people who do awful things. Let's stop listening to them and do other things.
Can we then? Thank you, Paul. Paul trying to get me slung out of the Labour Party.
Just leave of your own accord, John. You'll feel better.
Sort of hilarious. Can we also, Paul, can you just mention Orgreave? The Orgreave Truth and Justice rally is taking place on Saturday.
Oh yeah, go to that. There's some great people involved in that who you wouldn't be allowed to speak to.
Gather from noon in Sheffield City Centre. Orgreave Truth and Justice rally. I'm going to try and be there myself.
Yeah, that's a really good one. You've already done it, John. I don't need to do it, but I know the likes of John Dunn will be there. I love John Dunn. Isn't he amazing? So
Oh, you're allowed to speak to him, Paul.
I'm allowed to speak to whoever I want.
Exactly, yeah.
But you wouldn't be allowed to speak to him if you're in Labour because he's a naughty man.
No, definitely not to dictate to you. It's worse than, you know what people say, people dictate to you in the Tory party. The Labour Party is currently worse than the Tories because they try and preach to you and you pay for the privilege.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you can't say Tom, Dick or Harry. Yeah, use crack on and have your little like right-wing moron party. Use crack on. Not going to represent me.
I think it's because they never had any friends, and they think that people with actual genuine personalities being around it, they might like still not have any friends. So if they keep on excluding anyone with a personality.
Well, you can imagine how I went down like a lead balloon. Yeah.
So anyway,
it's gutting. It's sad though. It's really gutting. But yeah, let them crack on.
Yeah. I think we've bashed the Labour Party enough tonight. I'm sorry, John. There's still nice people who I really like who are still in the Labour Party for some reason.
Yeah. No. We now 8 minutes over time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we better go then, hadn't we?
The boss. We better shut up.
Take care, everyone. Have a lovely, lovely evening, and do something nice with your lives. Take care.
Keep the red flag flying here.